High school basketball regional games are in the books today, and I was out at Newcastle to watch Fishers-Kokomo and Liberty Christian and Seton Catholic in Class 1A, and definitely starting Class 4A because the crowd of the day, you know, Indiana high school basketball seems like it never fails. But 8,500 fans in attendance. Talked to Todd Grace, the assistant athletic director there at Newcastle, and that's what they're estimating it to be, was about 8,500 in the crowd. And they were about 3 rows deep across the top, and standing room in the gym today. So just an awesome crowd out at Newcastle. And the game didn't probably live up to maybe what we hoped it would or thought it might. Kokomo got behind 19-5 early on. Fishers kind of was able to control the tempo and the pace, I would say, and handle everything Kokomo had up front, basically. Taden Metzger got loose for 6 3-pointers. They had 18 points. And Fishers, they were down by 18, got it down to 9 in the fourth quarter, and kind of were going toe-to-toe with them a little bit. Metzger comes down and just drains a three over Flory's fingertips as he's coming to close out on him. That kind of turned things back. It was never, after that point, there was probably about 5.5, 6 minutes left right then. And from that point on, Fishers kind of controlled the rest of the game to that point. So Fishers moves on. They will play in the semi-state, and all this will come out Sunday. The semi-state draw by the IHSA will come out Sunday at 3 o'clock, and they will announce the pairings for the semi-state. A little bit different last year and this year and how they do that. So we'll kind of find out everything at that point as far as where teams go and who they play in the semi-state round. But Fishers just played really well. One thing to be concerned with here is Keenan Garner was injured with about 4 minutes left, turned his ankle, and that's going to be definitely something to watch for Fishers moving forward. Garner had 13 points, 10 rebounds. He's their leading scorer on the season, leading rebounder on the season. So having him out at all would be really detrimental to Fishers. If they could, if he can't play, and I don't know anything other than, he didn't play the rest of the game, and he said, I'll be fine. I'm going to play. You kind of have to wait and see how ankles go. You just never know how they react necessarily. But he sounded confident. I guess the good thing for Fishers, if they can get through the semi-state, you would have an extra week in between this year because of the NCAA tournament coming to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So the state finals games actually pushed back another week. So you would have an extra week in there, and I'm just thinking way ahead on that potentially. But anyway, Fishers able to get the win at Newcastle. And looking ahead up to that semi-state, Mishawaka beat East Chicago Central today 68-52. That was a bit of an upset. And then Crown Point beat Warsaw in overtime. So Crown Point advances at Michigan City. And then Fort Wayne, not a surprise. They beat Fort Wayne Northside 79-69. So those are the four teams. Fishers in with that group. Fort Wayne is really probably the team that we expected to be there. Javon Lewis, their point guard, very good player. They're a team that was in this semi-state last year. So you would think that could possibly be the toughest competition for Fishers up that direction. Although Mishawaka obviously been playing really well, and Crown Point under Clint Swan, a very good team also that has kind of come on here, and they've been good. Obviously been good for a while, but really played their best basketball here lately. So, and then the south side of the 4A bracket, I would say probably the more balanced, tougher bracket as we kind of thought this whole year, really. But Ben Davis beat New Pal 70-59. That game was at Southport today. And then Lawrence North beat Avon 69-50 and controlled that game throughout at Greenfield Central. Was able to watch a little bit of that on streaming. So Lawrence North advances out at Greenfield Central. And then also at Southport, Center Grove held off Franklin 68-56. And Jeffersonville down at Southridge beat Evansville Harrison 70-65. So your four teams there is really interesting. Center Grove, Jeffersonville, Ben Davis, and Lawrence North. That's a pretty good balanced foursome, I would say. and maybe the 4 that we kind of thought would get there. So that'll be a good group there. I would think that could be played at Southport. I could be wrong on that, or I'm just sort of guessing at this point. But that would be a pretty good place to put those 4 teams, I would think, looking ahead into the semi-state. And those semi-state games in the South, you would have Newcastle, Southport, Seymour, and Washington. So those are the 4 options there. So you would think with 3 teams, you have Center Grove, Ben Davis, and Lawrence North all in the kind of in the Southport area, but Jeffersonville obviously from farther away. So maybe Seymour's in play there. I'm not sure. We'll have to see on that. Last year they sent the 4A South group to Newcastle, so that would have been Brownsburg, Ben Davis, Jennings County, and Bloomington North. So I guess we'll find out. That'll be interesting to see what happens with that. In the draw tomorrow. In Class 3A then, so you have in the north, Peru beat West Lafayette 62-46. Fairfield beat Hammond Knoll 41-39. That was at Triton. South Bend St. Joe 53-38 over John Glenn. And Delta holds off of Fort Wayne Concordia 39-37 at Lapel. On the south side of the bracket, Guerin Catholic beat Washington at Greenfield Central. That was 56-39 to end the Continental season. Danville beat Northview 61-39, and Scottsburg beat Batesville. They had that Danville game at Lebanon. Scottsburg beat Batesville 84-46, so Scottsburg rolls at Seymour. And then Evansville Bosse 56-45 over Southridge. So your 4 teams in the South, and 2 of those are our area teams, Guerin Catholic and Danville. They advance. Scottsburg and Bosse also advance on the south side of 3A. On the north side, it would be Peru, Fairfield, South Bend, St. Joseph, and Delta in 3A. So those 8 teams advance in 3A. In 2A, up at Triton, Wabash beat Westview 50-45. North Judson 47-43 over Gary 21st Century. That's a little bit of an upset, I would say. And then a game where really, thought could be one of the best games of the day. Wapahani 65-41 over Tipton. So Wapahani gets through. I think they had 7 threes in the third quarter to pull away. That was a really close game at halftime. I think a 1-point game at the half. And then Fort Wayne Blackhawk at Frankfort, they beat Lafayette Central Catholic 64-48. So Fort Wayne Blackhawk Christian also advances. So the north side of 2A, you'd have Wabash, North Judson, Wapahani, and Fort Wayne Blackhawk. Blackhawk Christian and Wapahani, probably the 2 teams you'd really, that could be a great matchup potentially in the north side of 2A. And also in the southern half of 2A, Park Tudor rolls over Irvington Prep. That was 83-44. That game was at Lebanon. At Martinsville, Park Heritage beat Northeastern 51-37. At Seymour, Forest Park 58-33 over Switzerland County. And at the Hatchet House, it was Brownstown Central 67-41 over Sullivan. So your 4 teams there, and I think we've kind of been potentially looking down the road to a Park Tudor Brownstown Central matchup potentially. So those 2 teams would go with Park Heritage and Forest Park in the south half of 2A. So some good potential games there. And then in 1A, our results today, Marquette Catholic 57-32 over DeMott Christian. Elkhart Christian 58-57 at North Judson. That game was a buzzer beater. Elkhart Christian won on a buzzer beater there. Liberty Christian 77-72. I saw that game today over Seton Catholic. Liberty Christian really gets up and down, full court press, quick guards. A really good team, really young team, but a very good team. Fort Wayne Canterbury 57-38 over North Vermilion. That game was at Frankfort. Greenwood Christian beat Oldenburg Academy 49-42. That game at Martinsville. Bethesda Christian came back and dominated the second half. They beat Clay City 68-50. And at Lagodi, Barry beat Christian Academy 50-43. Evansville Christian 72-42 over Trinity Lutheran. So in the north half of 1A, you would have Marquette Catholic Elkhart Christian, Liberty Christian, Fort Wayne Canterbury, and in the southern half, Greenwood Christian, Bethesda Christian, Bar Reeve, and Evansville Christian. So I think Bar Reeve the only public school out of those 8 teams to advance in 1A. So, yeah, I mean that some really good games today. I would say, the story of the day probably is Fishers-Kokomo game, and just on that game, again, last game Flory Badunga played for Kokomo, and played well. Had 20 points, 7 rebounds, 4 block shots, and Flory just he's a dominant player inside. But he just did not get enough help. Carson Rogers held the 4 points. I thought Fishers did a nice job on him. Kokomo just couldn't hit any, really get anything going consistently on offense. And they just couldn't find Metzger a lot of times, too. Metzger knocked down 6 threes, like I said. And he's just a tough, he's going to make open shots. You got to guard him better. And they just couldn't quite get to him in time several times. So he really burned them. And then Fisher just has a lot. I mean, they're a tough team to stop. They just have so many different guys who can hurt you on a given night. And I think that's probably the strength of their team is just that, they're very connected and they just play well together as a team. And, that can go a long way. So, Fishers, I think, is probably you would definitely say the favorite in the top half of that bracket now with Noblesville gone, Kokomo gone, Westfield gone. So, the route is there for them to make the run to the state finals, and we'll see if they can do it. But that southern half of 4A, really interesting, those 4 teams, and we'll find out tomorrow where those teams will go and who they play exactly to get matched up. But Ben Davis, Center Grove, Lawrence North, and Jeffersonville, 4 really good teams, pretty evenly matched, I would say, in that bottom half of 4A bracket. So that's just kind of setting things up for tomorrow. We'll have more coverage, obviously, as the brackets announced, the pairings are announced, and obviously plenty more coverage as well on IndyStar.com from our high school basketball coverage. So thanks a lot. Have a good night.